Good evening, everybody. Today's Monday, April 23rd, 2018. It's 6:30 p.m. It's time for the Selectmen meeting. First order of business, as always, we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, before we get started,
Mr. Sullivan.
I just have to say, my daughter's returning from the Shepherd Hill Foreign Language Europe trip. They are on the ground in Logan, and if I get a text, she needs to be picked up, you're going to not have a quorum, so.
Okay, so let's get, and it also doesn't have anything to do with the fact that a certain puck may drop and, very soon, too, so.
If the bus driver could take 120 kids down the Mass Pike at 90, we might make it.
Maybe we'll make that, too, so. All right, we'll do the best we can here, so thank you for that. And also, Mr. Siganevich and Mr. Joseph are excused for this evening. Item 2 is acceptance of minutes. We have the minutes of April 9th, 2018. Mr. Sullivan.
Mr. Chair, we accept the minutes as presented.
Motion by Mr. Sullivan.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Ruda. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Unanimous, 3-0. Michelle? And then we have the executive session minutes of April 9th, 2018.
Mr. Chair, with the permission of the administrator, accept but not release, or is it okay to release?
Yes,
To release?
not to release.
Accept the minutes as presented, but not to release because it is an ongoing issue.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Sullivan, seconded by Mr. Ruda. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you, guys. Okay, so Section 3, we have a couple of appointments tonight. We have a cable access camera operator, Patricia Batista, looking to do that with the term to expire June 30th, 2018. Oh, come on up. Hi, come on up. Oh, yeah. Oh, you get
Up
the
to the
table right
table.
there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Just,
Yes.
it's
Yeah,
not,
I was just away.
absolutely, yeah, sit down, yeah. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself and
Oh, gosh.
why you'd like to do this, and
My name is Patty Batista, and I'm involved in a lot of things. I've always been involved in a lot of town activities, and I come to yoga in this room, and I saw the notice, and I said, gee, I could do that. So I talked to Ted, and I talked to Michelle, and here I am.
awesome, wonderful. Well, thanks for stepping up, and looks like our ads are working, so that's good. So, any questions for Pat?
No, Mr. Chair, just thank her for coming forward. It can be, as Fred would agree, it can be challenging, it can be fun, and it can be long.
Definitely. That one looks a little challenging, so we're
Yeah,
going to
there's
start with the
a lot of
small
buttons over
equipment
there.
first, and then maybe we'll try that, so, yeah.
Mr. Chair, make a motion that we appoint Patricia Batista, and is the term only to June 30th, 2018? Through? Oh, we
Oh, so
reappoint.
we'll reappoint, okay.
Yes.
With the term to expire 6/30/2018.
Motion by Mr. Sullivan, second by Mr. Ruda. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Thanks, Pat.
Great.
Thanks for stepping up.
Thanks for
Thank
doing
you.
that.
Looking
Really
forward to it.
appreciate that. All right, next up, Luis Pacheco, Police Reservist, term to expire 12/31/2018 for a conditional appointment. Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Louis is going to be here to appoint him, excuse me, as a reserve. He had been appointed conditionally back on March 12th. But he's completed everything up to this point. He seems to be an excellent candidate for the position. One of the people that took our last exam, so I'd like to move his name for consideration for appointment to the reserve force.
Chief, do we have a power level on the reserve force?
Excuse me?
Do we have like a power level on the reserve force, or is it?
Well, I think the maximum number we can take is up to 25. Right now, we're down to about 9, so we're trying to boost that back up. So Louis will be the second appointment of his latest list. I'm hoping to have another one within the next few weeks. And then we're going to do another round of interviews to try to get some more candidates in, probably summer or fall.
Okay. Self-sponsoring, or?
Let's see, well, I think we've got left to go on our list. I think we have, there's a few people that are in the academy right at this moment to try to get through in the Reserve Academy. So we're going to look through all those and see what we have to go from.
Okay, thanks, Chief. Louis, you want to tell everybody a little about yourself? And
Good evening.
Again?
Again. Basically, I started off trying to find a sponsor into the Reserve Academy. I completed the Reserve Academy. It's a tough process, great experience. This is going to be the beginning of a law enforcement career to me. It's a great step. I'm excited about the opportunity, and I'd love the opportunity to start here in Dudley.
Great, thanks.
Oh, just don't use it as a stepping stone too much.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to end here in Dudley.
Yeah,
That was actually brought up in the interview too in the beginning. If there was a step in promotions or anything like that, so I'd love to continue still staying here.
Good save.
good. Anybody have anything else, sir?
Nope. Mr. Chair, at this time, I enter the name of Louis Pacheco, term to expire 12/31/2018, as a police reservist.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Sullivan, seconded by Mr. Ruda. Any other discussion?
Thanks for stepping up.
Yes.
Good
Thank
luck.
you so much.
Good luck and be safe.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, appreciate it.
Okay. We'll see you around. Item 4, unfortunately, we have a resignation for the Zoning Board of Appeals. Bill LePage,
Junior.
William LePage Jr., effective 4/23/2018, which is today. Greg, or anybody have any information on that?
There's
Oh,
a note in your packet, I
Oh, I
believe,
see. Yeah, that's right.
indicating that Bill is voluntarily resigning due to his anticipated relocation to the town of Charlton.
Mr. Chair, make a motion that we accept with regret and authorize the administrator to send a letter, either signed by you or him, on the board's behalf, thanking Mr. LePage Jr. for his service. He came on towards the end of the tumultuous time there a year or so ago, and I think he watched a few of the meetings with distinction, and he's going to be missed.
You will.
Is this junior or senior?
Junior.
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 Second.
Second.
That was to put fathers on.
Did you make a motion?
Yeah, that was a motion.
Motion by Mr. Sullivan, second by Mr. Ruda. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you for your service, Bill. Appreciate it. All right.
Mr. Chairman, we'll put
Mr.
this
Ruda.
right out, to post the vacancy.
Yes.
Great, thanks.
I know that zoning board has taken a beating the last several years, but it's still a very important part of our town government.
It's a good board.
Good board. Okay, item 5, public comments. Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to speak on anything that's not currently on tonight's agenda? Hearing none. Okay. Move on a little bit. Greg, Town Administrator's Report?
Good evening. Just a couple of updates. The FAA will be having their warrant article information meeting and a capital committee meeting next Wednesday, May 2nd at 6:30 p.m. So anyone that wishes to know more about our town meeting warrant, which will be coming up on May 21st, is encouraged to come to that meeting, and they'll also learn a little bit about the capital planning process and what some of our capital requests are. The other thing I have is I think I might have mentioned to the board, we applied for some funding for some repairs to the roof of this building. Representative Durant had sent out a request to us and asked us to itemize some things that we needed money for immediately. And one of the things that we looked at was money for the chiller outside, which needs to be replaced. And the second thing is some money to do roof repairs on this building. And I just want to provide the board with a copy of a report that we received that we'll give out to the capital meeting, which kind of documents what the conditions are here. John, if you just take one and pass it down.
Roof Asset Management Program.
So this was a freebie that came about as a result of the fact that we have the fire station project that's going out to bid. Well, one of the things is, one of the contractors came in and looked at our roof, and so the roof was installed back in 2003. It's a membrane roofing. It's mechanically attached, and the roof has reached the end of its useful life, where it's no longer covered by warranty. The warranty would have expired back in 2013. And we've had some severe leaking in the building, most recently this week, where there was a waterfall just outside the men's and the ladies' room here on the third floor. And we've had periodic leaking throughout, but this is the first report that I've seen that documents the actual physical conditions. And we did request money for repairs for the roof, but the reality is that we're facing the fact that this building is going to need a new roof at some point, whether it's at this town meeting, in the spring, or we defer it to the fall. We would have to borrow because the potential cost is upwards of $250,000. We'd have to borrow, we'd bond it. And then if we don't receive money for the chiller outside, we have to do that, and it's about a $90,000 project. So if you take those two things together, you're talking about something in the range of $340,000 for the two of them. On units that aren't that old, we're talking about things that are 15 years old, but they're at the end of their useful life. And we'd have a building without cooling, and we'd have a leaky building. And as you know, leaky building deteriorates pretty quickly. So I have to put my heads together with the FAA and the Capital Planning Committee in terms of getting this up on the funding list to be looked at.
Okay, definitely. Yeah, I came in and I saw the ceiling tiles on the pond out there.
Yeah, we was it Friday, Michelle? So Friday, you remember, was a dry day, but it was indicative of the fact that there was some ponding up there, and that ponding let go and resulted in a huge waterfall.
Is there a better, Mr. Chairman, is there a better solution, or are we looking at all alternatives to replace this roof
Yeah.
instead of going back?
We've put in money for repairs, short-term, to get us through this winter, or get us through this summer. But the reality is we'd have to hire an engineer or an architect. That's about $7,000 or $8,000 to evaluate and then come up with a design plan for repair. I understand the roof needs to be replaced. It's no longer suitable for repairs. There were repairs done in the past, and it doesn't look like they've really done any good.
So it's another membrane roof.
I'm not sure what the alternatives are, so I'm saying I'm not a flat roof guy, so when you look at a building up here that's flat roof with internal drains, that's a recipe for disaster. So maybe there's some way of tilting the roof more than it is right now, but I'm the wrong guy to know what that solution is, other than to say the fact that we need to go forward and do some work on this building.
Right, on the solution page, Mr. Chair, it says multi-ply roof, and as Greg stated, flat tapered insulation. I mean, it looks like it's gonna come up to today's code. It's a mess anyway, it's gonna be a mess if we don't take care of it now.
And it'll have a 30 to 40-year warranty here.
Yeah, so the first thing we did when we found out we had a roof problem, we went back and looked at what our plans and specs said, and they were a 10-year warranty from the date of installation. So we're unfortunately beyond that warranty period. If we were within that warranty installation period, you wouldn't be hearing from me today.
So the request for the money from Representative Durant was to repair?
$25,000 for repairs and $90,000 for the chiller unit outside. If you look at the back parking lot, it's the thing that sits between the police station and the town hall.
The one that was squirting water the last time?
The one that was squirting water, and what I've been told is that thing is supposed to be mounted up off the ground so the water drains out. For whatever reason, that thing sits flush with the ground. So there's a problem with water draining out of it.
And that's not the original unit, I think that was replaced once already, right?
I don't know.
Right, poor insulation.
I know that there's been some work done on it over the years, but it's been Band-Aid approach, and the thing is rusted out. We need to replace it.
At least put it back in the same place.
Right.
Any idea how long the repairs would last us?
No, not,
They said 40 years on their solution
roof.
page.
the roof would make sense to go for the maximum term. I don't know what the useful life of something like that chiller unit is outside. One of the things that I haven't had a chance to look into is National Grid sometimes offers utilities and zero-interest grant programs if we want to replace it. So that may be an alternative on the piece of electrical equipment that sits outside, is that there may be some grant money that's available to us. Potentially, if they have a program that our energy cost savings is substantial, then maybe there's a way of paying it back through the savings and the cost, in which case it doesn't cost us anything, or the cost is reduced. But the roof, I'm not aware of any potential funding source other than the town coming up with it.
So Greg, just describe for everybody the mechanism for how we do that, the borrowing. It's not we're going for the voters or anything like that.
No,
right?
so what we would do is, just looking at the roof, we'd do borrowing for $250,000. Let's just use it as a round figure. They can borrow for a term of up to 20 years, so what we do is amortize those costs over 20 years. Do a short-term borrowing during the period of time that construction is taking place, and then look to permanently bond that and do it within the confines of Prop 2.5. We can spread the payments out over enough years that there shouldn't really be a major impact on the town in terms of finances, and fortunately, we're able to do so. If we can borrow for a shorter term, we should do that also.
And you're thinking about $8,000 for an engineering study?
7 to 8 grand.
Do you think it's worth doing that sooner rather than later?
I do. I do.
All set. Yep, just
All right, thanks for that.
That
Yeah,
completes my
something-
report. Thank
updates
you.
on the travel.
Thank you, Greg. Wow. Always something, right? All right, we have no around town, we have no license and permits, we have no public hearings, but we do have some public business. 10A, there's a toll booth request. The South County Cheer and Football League is asking permission to hold a toll booth on Saturday, June 30th, 2018, from 9 a.m. to noon on the Webster Dudley Town Line. So are they here? Come on up.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to thank Michelle for including the already existing toll
Oh, good
booths,
call, yeah.
which kind of, there's only a few, but it helps us with, we always ask the question, anybody before or after, but thank her for the chart.
Hi, hey, good to see you. You want to tell everybody who you are and why you're here?
Yeah, so my name's Leah Brazo. I am the fundraiser coordinator for South County, and we are needing lots of funds. We try to have a program that we never turn kids away from playing football with us, but we still have to pay for the field, for, the police to come, I'm sorry, not police, the ambulance to be there just in case there's emergency. So we just have to beef up our funds. Unfortunately, in past years, we've had people in our board that spent money a little bit more than they should have. So we're starting off our year as pretty much we've got $200. So we need to, if it's possible, to have this toll booth, because it's been a really good thing every time we have been able to do it. And that's why we're requesting to do it again this year, if that was okay with the board.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, excuse me.
Mr. Sullivan?
Have you, obviously spoke to the office, have you spoken to the police chief, how we have it set up, the rules?
Actually, I got all the information through the email, and they said this was the next step, and as long as that was okay, then they told me what other things that we had to do to be able to do that safely, and I read all the rules, and I went over with South County's, because we have a board there too, and I went over that with them as well to make sure we were able to do that.
Both chiefs are all set with that?
Okay.
All right, Mr. Chair, make a motion to grant the
Sullivan?
request for a toll booth on Saturday, January 3rd, 2018, from 9 to noon, on behalf of the South County Cheer and Football League.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Sullivan, seconded by Mr. Ruda. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you, Leah.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Appreciate it, thank
Okay,
you.
be
Make some money.
successful. Thank you. All right. Okay, well, that's good. Next, we have Planning Board. Guy Horn is here. We're gonna have a discussion regarding Ramshorn Road solar proposal and Partridge Hill Road. Come on up, Guy. Looks like Pat French would like to come up as well. Some others, spokespeople.
Good evening.
Hi, Guy.
Hi, thanks
evening.
for having us.
Hello.
Okay, so basically, we just wanted to go over and inform the Board of Selectmen what's one of the things that's happening with the Planning Board. And then the residents of Partridge Hill Road brought another matter to our attention when we were reviewing this. So we've had a candidate come forward and ask us to sponsor a warrant article for the Springtown meeting, which is basically to put an warrant article on for 2 individual lots that are off of Ramshorn Road. I believe it's 99 Ramshorn Road. There are 2 lots totaling 42 acres combined. They're proposing that these 2 lots be added to the town of Dudley's solar overlay district. And what this would do is, basically, we would sponsor the article, the planning board would sponsor the article for the Springtown meeting, put the matter before the townspeople, if they would like to add those 2 lots to the solar overlay district for the construction of a large solar voltaic, basically a solar farm. So like I said, the 2 lots combined are 42 acres. They're proposing 13.5 acres of solar arrays, and there's approximately 13 acres of wetlands on the property. So they're looking at utilizing about a third of the 2 lots combined for the solar farm. The particular area of this solar farm, it would pretty much be not visible from a road, with the exception of some of the people who live on Partridge Hill Road. When you're driving up Partridge Hill Road on the right-hand side, some people would be able to see this from their backyards if they look down, because it would be quite a bit below their grade level. So it would be below their current yards. What was brought to our attention by the residents at Partridge Hill Road was that, I believe back in 2009, there was an agreement made, and I'm assuming the agreement was made with the Board of Selectmen's knowledge, because it went through the Zoning Board of Appeals. Basically, the landowners are Gene and Kurt Derschmidt. They basically got frontage waivers for the 2 lots to reduce the access from 50 feet down to 25 feet on both lots. And then there was an agreement put in place that if at a future date they were to sell these 2 lots, that they would use the proceeds from the sale of the 2 lots to basically bring Partridge Hill Road up to current standards, so that it could be accepted by the town as an accepted roadway. Currently, half the roadway, or approximately half the roadway, is accepted, the other half is not accepted, I think you know that. But the town still plows it. So the residents, when they heard about this, came to us and said, you know, what's going on with the land? Well, technically what's going on with the land, when you put a solar farm on it, it's not sold, it's leased. And I think the town knows this, because we're looking at it for ourselves on the landfill parcel already. So, you know, and the other thing is like, the planning board is not, we're elected officials just like you are, but we're not liable, we're not legally responsible for entering into agreements with, you know, private entities for the good of the town. So I wanted to bring this to your attention so that you would know about it, and that there was a possibility that you could enter into an agreement. The company that came forward, the applicant, said that they were going to talk to the landowners and see if there was something that they couldn't work out, because basically, for the solar proposal to go forward, they need to have the overlay district in place. And if the residents of Partridge Hill Road showed up to the town meeting, I think you all know that that could make it or break it one way or the other without too much trouble, based on the attendance that we have at town meeting.
That works.
So, if they would like the solar proposal to go forward, there's a good opportunity here for the residents of Partridge Hill Road to get the road fixed and get it accepted by the town. But I wouldn't want to see them jump through all the hoops and get everything lined up, only to go to town meeting after the road's been repaved or what have you, and then find out, well, we still don't want to accept it, you know? I mean, they've been waiting 25 years for the rest of this road to get accepted, and it hasn't gotten accepted yet. I know it's been on the warrant at least 2 times in the past that I can remember, but it wasn't accepted at either town meeting. So I think, you know, looking forward, this is a good opportunity, one, for the town, if the solar overlay district goes through and these 2 lots are part of it, the town would have another solar farm in town. You guys could enter into a pilot agreement with the solar company. Obviously, the landowner would use some of the profits from the solar farm, from the lease of the land, to repave the road or whatever's necessary to make it whatever the town is looking for, to bring it up to standards of today, so that they could go ahead and accept it as a public way. And these people would receive all the benefits of living on a public way versus a private way.
Thank you, Guy. Mr. Sullivan?
So, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Horn, so you're saying that the lots on Ramshorn were never developed nor sold?
They were never developed or not sold. They're still owned by the same family.
Because I'm gonna, I'm gonna be kind of frank here. I was on the planning board when all this was going before. Matter of fact, I found some plans that I had. I was showing them some of the residents. And the landowner in question, made a lot of promises way back when, never delivered on them. And granted, part of it is this two-lot thing, but there's that parallel dirt road that runs to a lot that he was granted permission to build on. I'm gonna speak against it at the town meeting if my questions and concerns aren't answered. I understand Mr. Horn's point about get the road fixed. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say, I want the road fixed by the developer. Let him recoup his cost through the lease of his land that he's gonna benefit from. Maybe the town somehow benefits, I'm not sure how that works. I'm gonna stand up against it, even if the planning board endorses it, because I don't think we should be bending over backwards to give a person, a developer in town, a chance to pad his pocket unless he does what he should be doing. As Mr. Horn just said, some of these folks, I see people, I signed those papers in 2002. I don't know where the time went. They were here in 2002.
I moved to the road in 1992,
Yeah.
and it was a private way then. And, you know, from the very beginning, there was never any, the developer never had any input on the road, never did a thing.
Well,
So
input
it's
as
been
in-
going, what's that?
Input as in
I don't
making
mean
progress.
input. I mean, he
Yeah.
never cared for the road. He never plowed it. Anything the town always did, and we were very thankful for that. But you know, there were multiple opportunities, and you know, we've been here before. Mr. Joseph at one point had come up to our
I wish he was
road
here.
and walked the road with Mr. Guyon, and at that point, it was paved, and I think the town wanted another top coat, and Mr. Dershman wasn't willing to do that. So it just fell into, I think, what Mr. Horn just mentioned, the provisions that were put on the land in case it was sold for the variances. But I think back then, nobody ever foresaw that it could possibly be leased for a solar purposes. So now we find ourselves, you know, this might be our one opportunity. There was land sold off of Dudley Southbridge Road that Mr. Dershman owned back in, I think, around 2012-ish, and there were no provisions on that land, so we missed an opportunity there. So, I mean, we just want our road accepted, brought up to the town standards, and, you know, so we never have to worry about going forward. Is the town going to say we're not going to plow it again? Because that's what brought us all before you,
Right.
I don't know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever it was.
Well, that's what I was going to say, Mr. Chair. If memory serves me correct, on the plan I had, and at the time, I didn't go to the walk. I think it was on a Saturday. I was working, but I went up there with the highway superintendent at least a couple of times. The cul-de-sac that was constructed did not comply to the original cul-de-sac that was approved. And one of those plans is 2002, which I did sign, and it was a plan that came after the cul-de-sac was already made. The developer had done, you know, I don't want to say his own thing, but it was not done to the standard, to the plan that was approved. And that was all, in the beginning, somebody else came representing him. Oh, he can't, you know, he can't come, he's not well, which was fine. He eventually did come before us. Michelle found some records for us, which was great. But I am certainly not gonna bend over backwards, you know, to increase an overlay district, which is probably a great idea in the concept, to give a person a chance to pad their pocket or to benefit financially unless the road is done first. And then he can recoup his cost through whatever agreement he can make on private land. And I don't speak for the board, I speak for myself. I mean, I've gotten up plenty of times. Mr. Horn served me on the planning board. You know, a lot of times we saw eye to eye, sometimes we didn't. I mean, if I lose 1-4 when the board makes recommendations, I'm gonna be the one. I don't think it's right, I don't think it's fair. And if this is truly their one chance to get their road done and done right, we owe it to them, we owe it to the rest of the town, and we owe it to future people. I mean, you go up there, there's a berm that goes about 900 feet, Danny, roughly? 1,054. And if you go 1,065, the water's coming down, and it's eroding off the sides, it's starting to erode the town-accepted part. I mean, I can't say it enough, I'm not gonna let a person potentially benefit unless he fixes the mess that he's left behind. We've seen it before, you know, on Paula Lane. We're picking up the pieces, planning board picking up the pieces, you know, across from St. Anthony's, Padua there. the little side road where the Bohankos live on. You know, we've seen it, and it's not fair to the town. So that's how I stand, and maybe I'm way off base and nobody here agrees with me, but
Well,
wouldn't be the first time.
well, I agree. For me, I want to look at this as more of like a Dave's Way scenario, where the developer actually took ownership of it and did the road before anything else happened. That's what I'd like to see, which is sort of what you're saying, before anything happens, right?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of years.
I mean,
sorry.
we've been going through all these things that, you know, people agree or sign off on, and you can see the time that goes by. 30 years later, we're sitting here, none of, well, you were there at this one, but what do you
Almost.
do, right? We're good about not letting this happen going forward, but, I mean, the right thing has to happen here. Jay, weigh in.
Oh, sorry,
sorry.
Mr. Chair, we had an issue a couple of years ago. A developer came to the window and said, contacted Danny also and said, I want you guys to plow my subdivision. I'm not going to do it anymore. It costs too much. And I hate to name the subdivision, but I will if people want to know. The guy ended up plowing it, and then he's continuing to build, and he's getting bond reductions and all this other stuff. And you go up there, and it's a base coat that's been underground 7, 8 years, and it's, you know, like you said, we have to come in and pick up the pieces. I mean, it's not fair to the town. I mean, we're pretty fiscally responsible on our monies, and we're prudent. And, you know, these folks call, and they're, you know, not these folks being a generic term, they're in a jam. We do what we can. We had it with Tobin Farms.
Yep.
The private developer, that winter a couple of years ago, piled the snow 40 feet high on the curbs, and guy came to my house, and I want you to
Came
come.
me, Danny, they took care of it.
Yeah, literally came to my house on a Saturday. I'm like, I gotta go. I got stuff to do, but, you know, we get stuck, and we're the bad guys.
So,
Sorry, Jay.
So the 2010 variance was based on a future promise to improve the road,
If he sold,
if he sold?
correct.
Yeah, okay, so this is entirely our fault.
Well, this is,
We had this habit, I don't know why we don't do it anymore, but we had this habit of extending credit to people. If, you know, we'll grant you this so that you can increase your personal wealth, and then we'll hope in some time in the future, you'll make good on your deal. So I agree with you 100%.
I mean, like the lady said, he sold that other piece which wasn't included, so you would think, a reasonable person may think, gee, I promised A, I actually did B, but I ended up with C. I should do what I promised, and we wouldn't be in this position.
But
That's what it comes down to.
The specific request now is a variance based on, so this land that was part of this deal is being leased as opposed to sold. So the loophole is we're leasing it, we're not selling it, so therefore we're not responsible to.
And he's asking the planning board to sponsor, to either increase or add to, whatever the terminology is, to the solar farm overlay district. So that, not only do they want us to bend over backwards to kind of like forget that he was going to fix the road when he sold the land, because he didn't sell that specific land, he wants us now to bend over backwards, rezone some land for him, so he can enter into a lease agreement to get some monies which will go in his pocket. So again, I think, and I don't know if I can't speak for anybody but myself, the prudent solution should be fix your problem, fix your mess, enter into your lease, and put the money back in your pocket that you had to put out to fix your problem.
Well, it goes to what you tell your kids every day. Do what you say you're going to do. And it is a loophole. I see this as exactly what that is. What can we do with this land? Either sell it, we want to keep it in the family. Oh, why don't we lease it? That's how I see this. And Guy, can we put a condition on
well,
anything?
that's what I was just going to tell you, through the chair. I understand where Mr. Sullivan's coming from, but again, this is going to probably be our last shot at this. You know, this ship's going to sail.
On which piece? Getting the road fixed, or?
Getting the road fixed,
Okay.
period. I mean, whether the solar farm goes through or not, you know, if, the only way the road's gonna get fixed is if the solar farm goes through. If the solar farm doesn't go through, he's not gonna fix the road, obviously. So,
But I would like to see some kind of conditions put on this land so he cannot proceed with anything on this land until our road is fixed. I mean, I cannot say
I
with
would
one-
agree with that. It's been 8 years and there's been no
I mean, we cannot,
good faith.
16 years.
correct, no, it's
16
been
years.
way longer than that even.
Oh, yeah,
But I
18
can't
years.
say
Yeah.
that if the town votes for this solar to go through, I can't guarantee what the rest of the residents are gonna do or anything like that. I mean, there are other considerations, they may not want to look down on this, okay? So I don't look at this really as our one chance. I mean, it is a chance, but I would like to see the town step up in, you know, I don't know how, but there has to be some kind of conditions put on any property he owns. I don't know if he owns any other property in Dudley, but I mean, it's just gone on too long, and I think that we need something to say, you can't proceed. I mean, we've let him sell off lots on Partridge Hill Road, change the circle to a different plan, sell off a big piece of property off of Dudley Southbridge Road, and they never stepped up and did anything with Partridge Hill Road. The only time something was done with Partridge Hill Road was when there was an agreement entered between a resident who bought property up there. I believe there was some kind of barter. He paved the road and he got the land, and that's when the road was paved. It was dirt when I moved, and the private part was, most of it was dirt. So it was paved through an agreement. I don't think there was any monetary change of hands.
Mr. Chairman, through the chair.
Mr. Ruda.
Sully, do you remember if there was there an intent to sell this land at the time?
If I remember recalls, and I wish Mr. Joseph was here, because I recall he was pretty strong that night. When we finally got the developer in here, Michelle found what she could. I remember him saying that was his intent. He was going to sell it because Paul asked him, I remember 3 or 4 times, I know Michelle was there, is this what you're going to do? Yep. He was in the process of selling his house, moving to Webster. I forget all his personal stuff. He wasn't supposedly feeling well. But that was his intent, and that's why we put he needed the frontage waivers, the 50 to 25, that's why I believe the minutes, if we could find them, would reflect we asked the ZBA to look on it favorably because, and as you can see by the document presented, that didn't go through appeal because I'm sure the people up there remember they were going to get their road fixed when he sold this land. Now, we can't tell a person to sell it if he doesn't want to, obviously, but
No, but
that was his intent. He definitely said on camera or in the meeting, I will sell it and use proceeds to fix the road.
So I guess my point is that there's, short of, now that he's saying he wants to lease the land, there's clearly no intent to sell it, if he wants to lease it.
Right.
It's gonna be
So
long-term.
my suggestion would be that we send this through our acting town council, whoever that may be, to take a look at this and see if, now that there's clearly no intent to sell the land and fulfill their part of the agreement, if that nullifies this and now we re-engage them and say, there's not gonna be any more variances. There's not gonna be any more requests granted until we go back 18 years and we start fulfilling some of our carrot and stick approach.
So, Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Horn, does he need those lots to grant access to that property? Is that the problem, or he just wants to add it to the property, make it bigger?
No, he's not adding lots to it. He's got 2 lots already with frontage waivers that were granted, and instead of
If he used the proceeds to, right? Is that, you're talking about the ZBA decision?
yeah, those lots are in existence.
Right, so what, is he looking to add those lots to the existing parcel, or does he need those lots to have access to where the solar farm's going?
No,
That is the parcel.
That is the parcel
Oh, I
with
thought
the
there was
solar
one
farm.
behind it, too.
No,
Oh, just those two?
those 2.
So so my point is, Mr. Chairman, this was based on his intention to sell the lot. That's why the variance was granted, to get improvements on Partridge Hill.
Right.
Now, he's essentially put in writing that he has no intention of selling those lots.
And he's got his variances.
So, to me, that means that you're not fulfilling your end of the agreement.
Exactly.
So,
Getting around it.
this board either decides to re-engage him through town council, or we don't move forward with it. As a matter of fact, we go to town meeting and say, the intention here was to sell, and based on that, you've got your variances, so we can improve Partridge Hill. Now you've made it clear your intention is not to sell, so what's up?
So, Mr. Chair, to the administrator, does that mean, this is a contract, it's a legally binding agreement, does that mean the variances go away if he doesn't fulfill his half of the, right, it's recorded, it's a contract. So he clearly says, he got variances on the assumption he was gonna sell. Now that he's not selling, he's not fulfilling his contract, does that mean the variances go away? Or is that
What-
council?
I mean, I can only say in a general sense, these things are put together in an effort of good faith established by both parties. And the key word is good faith, Sully. You know, I mean,
Expressing your intention not to sell what you said you're gonna sell
correct.
is certainly not an expression of good faith.
It is not.
Right, because it clearly states in here, condition of these two variances that proceeds from the sale of either or both. And as John said, he's putting a tractor through a needle loophole by leasing. So would that make his variances null and void?
I'll find out.
Yeah, let's go on that. The ironic thing, the planning board, if this goes to town meeting, you know, he has no intention of doing that. The residents will show up and say no, right? Which he can't do it to fix the road. So, I mean, I think if town council, maybe, to your point, re-engage with the Derschmidts or whoever they're represented by to say, you know, this probably isn't gonna happen, unless we resolve all the other stuff.
And I think from what I've heard from the representative of the solar company, that they're willing to interact with the Derschmidts and tell them what the situation is. The problem that we have on the planning board is we can't negotiate agreement. My hope with coming here tonight was that explaining this to you is that you could possibly ask the town administrator to get involved and negotiate a contract, because you can put whatever stipulations you want forward to this gentleman, and he can propose it to the landowner, and if the landowner agrees, you've got a new contract. I wouldn't really worry about the old contract. I think it's too late to worry about that now. I mean, the situation is that if the solar farm goes forward, it's a 20-year land lease with probably a possible additional 5 to 10 years on top of that. So the land's going to be tied up for 20 to 30 years.
You know, the most important thing about this old contract is that he welched on it.
But he didn't sell the land. He's still the landowner. So technically, in my opinion, I'm not a lawyer, but in my
But he
opinion...
was granted these things on the conditions that certain things would happen.
But now he wants to lease instead of sell.
And here's a question, Guy. Did the solar company go to them, or did they go to them?
The solar company approached them. Mr. Derschmidt...
How big
no
is
long-
that
It's
area?
42 acres.
42 acres?
Mr. Derschmidt no longer lives in the state.
Right.
He lives in California with his son.
Yep.
And he's not in good health, so his son's handling all the affairs. And his son had no idea that there was even an agreement with the town of Dudley.
Is anybody from the Derschmidts here? No?
No.
Well, I feel bad, but that's what happened in the past. You know, at the time he wasn't feeling well, he couldn't come before us, and then we found out he was teaching at Nichols, and he did come before us, and I understand what you're saying, you know, don't look at this, but I'm gonna keep looking at this, and whoever owns the land has to fulfill, I think, his promise, whether it's his son, any heirs, or any successors. Then you sit down and run your numbers. If you're gonna get X number of dollars from the solar farm, and it costs X to fix the road, and it's still worthwhile, then do it. I mean, I understand the resident's point. I don't know if we can put a condition on the sale of property.
No, but the other thing we can do, we have another route, now that I just figured this out. The solar company has a lot to gain by leasing that land.
Right.
So maybe we negotiate with them to fix the road if the Derschmidts aren't into it.
But it goes back to Mr. Horn's point, and I agree with him. The solar company probably won't fix the road without some kind of assurance they're gonna get. So I think,
Well, every scenario we talked about has either one thing could happen.
right,
at town meeting,
I think we need to find out if the variances go away, if this contract is null and void. Jonathan's point about council or Greg engage, but it's up to the property owner to find out if the financial benefit of the solar farm, however the road gets fixed, whether the solar farm people fix the road and take the money away from their lease, or the Derschmidt or their heirs fix the road and take the cost of the road out of their proceeds. I said it
Well,
6
it becomes
times.
the cost of doing business.
I'm not gonna bend over backwards,
me neither.
especially, I'm gonna get up at town meeting if they give a positive recommendation. If we don't have a resolution, I'm gonna say no.
All that good faith.
Mr. Chairman, could I just ask Mr. Corn, who's the solar developer, do you know?
It is Forefront Power. I believe it's out of New York.
What's their name again?
Forefront Power.
Forefront power?
Don't know.
The gentleman that came to our meetings numerous times was Ed Switzer.
I was hoping it was someone we've dealt with in the past.
You know, too, that brings another question, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Horn. I remember when I was on the planning board, we'd have people come in and say, well, I've been talking to a landowner. We used to always say, did they come in with a letter saying, like Derschmidt gave them permission to speak, like on his behalf? Were they even speaking on his behalf when it
No,
came
they're,
to the road or the waivers?
they're asking for us to sponsor an article. They're going through the route that they need to do to get this article sponsored. They even went above and beyond to the point where they invited the landowners or the abutters to come to to come to our meeting and find out for themselves what was going on before we even held a public hearing. You know, the public hearing on the article won't be until before the town meeting. So it was at the recommendation of Mr. Briere to have them come forward, have them come to the next meeting, and we actually held like a preliminary public hearing so that they would understand what this was all about. And then that's when they introduced the paperwork and the deeds that you have before you to the solar company. And the solar company, I mean, they're willing to negotiate this. I mean, to Mr. Sullivan's point, it doesn't really matter whether the solar company pays for it out of their pocket and deducts it out of the lease contract, or if they say to the landowner, this ain't gonna happen unless you fix your road that you've neglected for a number of years. And if, you know, so it doesn't really matter. I don't think it matters to the homeowners who pays for it, as long as it gets done. But the situation is that the planning board can't negotiate the conditions put onto this
No, I get that,
I
Guy.
think we get that. So we're just gonna re-engage at this point
I think,
through town council.
like I said, we get the answer to that, my question, Jonathan's question, and I think the point Greg has to, or the planning board has to get to the solar company is the Board of Selectmen, as highway commissioners and as overseers of the town, any way you want to phrase us, is looking down upon this unless you can come up with a plan, whether it's, as Mr. Horn just said, he fixes it, deduct the money, you fix it, deduct the money. It's gonna have to be a condition somehow, just like this was a condition. You get frontage waivers if you do what you have to do. You want a solar farm, you want us to change our bylaws to benefit you, whether you live in California, Webster, you're gonna have to do what you need to do to satisfy the town's concerns. And if I'm going down the wrong road, I'm sorry. If the administrator talks to council and they say I'm full of, but I just think, as was stated earlier, this, maybe not the last shot, but this is a good shot. I mean, I think it's a win-win. The road get fixed, somebody has to pay, and somebody's still gonna make money. They may not make as much, or they may not like what they have to do, but we have to do something to protect ourselves.
And on top of that, you know, there is the good possibility that the town would enter into a pilot program with this solar company for the solar field.
Well, I'm sure their pilot, sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm sure their request for a pilot would reflect any upfront costs that they have to do to complete what the town wants to be completed. I don't think that's unreasonable.
Nope, that's exactly my take on it. That's exactly what I'd want.
But the other thing that I just wanted to mention too is that, you brought it up, Mr. Marcy, is that, you know, the Board of Selectmen is the highway commissioners. So what I don't think these residents want to see happen is that, you know, all this gets done, the road gets refinished or repaved or whatever, it gets brought up to snuff, and then the road's still not accepted by the town. So, you know, I think they would like to see some kind of assurances too, that from your board, that, you know, once this is done, for once and for all, it'll get taken versus just being left out in limbo.
Well,
If it's
that-
up,
that's right, as Mr. Horn knows, that's the whim of town meeting. I mean, if the person, I've been on 2002, at least 16 years, there's never been a road finished by town specifications, inspected by Danny, inspected by Graves, that has not been accepted, nor, let me rephrase that, has not even been sponsored for acceptance by our two boards. So the only assurance we, and I think the planning board could give, is if the road is built to the acceptable standards, and I mean today's standards, not 1979 when it was oil and gravel, and it's done to the completion where the engineer goes through the form and punches the punch list, we will give it a positive recommendation. I mean, we're not at the point where we have been turning down
we
finished
just
roads.
did this in Dave's way. It was accepted at town meeting.
Yep.
Everybody, the developer did what he said he was gonna do, the residents, everybody understood. It sailed right through a town meeting, and that's what will happen this time.
Well, that's the only.
When everything is right. That's how it works.
That's the only assurance I would give as a selectman, that
Yeah.
as long as we get to the end of the Form H,
Right.
and it's signed off, Danny signs off, fire chief doesn't have a problem with a cul-de-sac that may need a waiver because he can't turn his fire truck around up there, because I don't think it's built to that standard. Then we go to town meeting, and these folks show up, and they get all their voting age children and friends and family in there, and if it's 51 out of 100, they're good to go.
So how do we leave it? I mean, the town meeting is in a month, so, I mean, there's no way this is all gonna get resolved.
It will be if the person wants a solar farm.
Can this board authorize the town administrator to negotiate on your behalf?
Yeah, he does anyway,
I think
usually.
we just kind of said that. Greg's going to contact council, try to get some answers as
We
quick
just
as...
need some contact information in terms of who this developed, the people involved, to get started, so that the town typically has a formula for determining pilot payments associated with these solar projects. So we know what the potential gain in revenue is. I hope the expectation is that we're not gonna concede the revenue for the town so that the road can get fixed.
No.
The concession should be from the landowner and the developer,
Right.
not for the town to concede its revenue anticipated as a result of, let's say, a 20-year pilot agreement. That's a big concession for the town to make, and I just want
No,
to be
this-
clear, we're not the ones that are gonna be, we're not being asked the ones to make that
No,
concession.
this was explained to the developer that that it would be two wins for the town. The road would get fixed, and there would be a pilot program for the town.
Then that's a go.
And he
And
was,
and I'm sure this developer runs into this stuff all the time.
right.
If we Google it, I'm sure they're fixing someone else's road.
And the good thing is, Mr. Chair, if it gets to town meeting, we don't have the answers, and it doesn't get defeated, because once it's defeated, it can't come back. When a zoning article gets defeated,
Well, this is just for the overlay.
pass
So
it
here-
over.
here's the thing, if we don't have enough time to get it done by town meeting, we can still get it, just hear this out till the, to the end. I know everybody's gonna get nervous here, but if it was passed at town meeting for the overlay district, it's only for the overlay district. It's not approving the project. The applicant still has to come back before the planning board and get their special permit and all that stuff. And at that point in time, we could, if the Board of Selectmen has worked diligently in trying to get an agreement and there was no agreement, then I think we would have a legal precedent to stand on and say, look, we're trying to work out this agreement with this developer. He did not come up with his end of the bargain, so therefore, we're not gonna allow a special permit for this project to go forward.
well, Mr. Chair, through you, then one question I want town administrator to also ask, our acting town council, specifically ask the question, are we putting ourselves at any kind of risk by approving the overlay district before we have an agreement, only because we all know, once once a land is approved for a certain kind of use, we open up the door to possibilities that we can't even think about, where somebody might take a loophole. Because I'm gonna, again, at town meeting, if we don't have an agreement in place, we can pass it over to November if the body decides. I'm not gonna vote to extend the overlay district unless council says we're completely protected. I'm gonna get up and recommend we don't vote it in if we don't have an agreement in place to protect ourselves. I don't want to give a person a chance to even have a hint of a use that's not currently existing unless we're protected. And I don't think that's unreasonable.
It's not, I agree with
May I
Steve.
ask a question? I don't know if this is to you or to you, Guy. If the overlay does not pass in May, because the residents don't feel comfortable or don't want to look down maybe on solar panels, at what point, and say the Dershmits fix the road, hallelujah, at what point could they come back and try to do something again? I'm worried about the zoning, changing it, and then it's permanently changed, and then who knows what happens down the road. This one falls through, but then we're stuck, because now solar panels can go in there and, 5 years down the road, and we have no leg to stand on if our road wasn't done. Do you know what I'm asking? If it doesn't pass at the town meeting, what happens then?
So the zoning doesn't actually change. It's not, we're not
Right, it's
changing the zoning.
residential. You're doing an overlay, I understand
Right.
that, but once that overlay passes, is it permanent? Is that permanently zoned for,
Unless you go back to town
Go back
meeting
and
and
change it.
bring it back.
okay.
But my question, like Mr. Massey just asked too, is, and I'm gonna play devil's advocate, the 4 or 5 houses on the right side that are gonna see solar panels, I don't want that. Well, if you go to town meeting, there's 100 people there, and 51 say, we want this overlay district, they're not gonna care if the 4 houses can see solar
Right, but
panels.
from my understanding, you need a 2/3 vote for it to pass, but only a majority for it to not pass. Is that correct?
No, two-thirds majority vote for the solar overlay district.
Right.
But we, on the special permit with the planning board, we only need a simple majority.
Okay, but is that the planning board that votes, or the citizens?
The citizens vote for the overlay district,
Right,
for the solar overlay district. The planning board's voting for the special permit for the,
okay.
So when I say
So
51, I
the
should
only
say
input the
67.
citizens have is at the town meeting,
Right.
is what
When I
I'm
say
saying.
51,
So
I should have
that's,
I should have said 67, it's two-thirds. But
Okay.
we can pass it over to the fall to give us
More
a few
time,
more months
yeah.
to hammer out an agreement. Or not, we don't have to hammer nothing out. We just tell them what was in place. We find out if it's still valid or if it's null and void because he's not selling it. And then we put the condition, as Mr. Horn said, on the property owner. It can't be the developer, because the developer technically doesn't have the right to speak for a property owner. They can come in and say, I'll put a fountain out front with lights and it's gonna be like a great place to go. And the guy that owns the land says, I didn't agree to that. So it's gotta be the burden's on the property owner to negotiate with the person he wants to lease to make it acceptable to the town with the terms that we give him. Not the developer that comes in and says, yep, no problem, I'll face them this way, I'll put screening, I'll do this and that, and then
More conditions, yeah.
right, and the guy said, I never agreed to that, I own the land, you can't, I never agreed to any of that.
Yeah. Greg, I'm really excited, I want to see what Attorney Randazzo says about all that, because I assume she'll look at it, but, yeah, we can't do anything until we really see that. I think that's the next step.
yeah. So the other situation too is, and this happens with most solar companies, is that they're allotted so many credits or what have you from the state, and they've basically got themselves a slot for a project, and then if the project doesn't come to a certain term or agreement at a certain point, then they're gonna lose their spot. So I think that's currently the situation with this project, that if it doesn't get through the hurdles that it needs to at the Springtown meeting, they may not, this particular company may not be interested in looking at it in the fall, although that doesn't say that another company wouldn't be. I'm just saying that this
So there's a
particular,
compelling event, is what that is, for
Right.
them and us to
Right.
come to an agreement.
so there is some time crunch for them.
Well, what is it, Mr. Joseph always says, something to the effect that somebody's time,
He's listening at home.
yeah, he says something to people all the time, your time crunch or whatever, is not our concern. I mean, yeah, we want to get
Right?
we want to be protected, but just because
Yep.
we're meeting in town meeting in what, 5 weeks? 4 weeks?
Next month.
It's not our fault.
Typically, these agreements take a while to put together. They're not something that's a 2-page document or a 40-page document,
They could have had a hell of an agreement for over the past 18 years.
reviewed by both
Wouldn't
attorneys.
be having these problems
You
right
know,
now.
Right?
I think optimistically, the best thing we can hope is a letter of commitment maybe from them, pending an agreement. Something that specifies what they're willing to do and do so in writing. I think stretching it and saying we can have an agreement in place is really difficult.
I tend to agree. I mean, I think the ball's in their court at this point. And even when we go to town meeting,
Yeah,
no matter where it stands, the people who are gonna vote need to know what the history of this was,
and it's,
and let them vote accordingly.
right, it's got to be clear, like I said, the specific question about, are we hurting our position by approving this zoning request? Because if that even opens the door a crack for someone to come in and, we don't get what we need, what the town people deserve, then shame on us for,
Oh, that's, yeah.
and I mean, conditional approval, this and that, once you start putting conditions on, it gets murky fast.
No, I want to see some commitment before we really start supporting it. I mean, I know the overlay is part of their checklist, like to make it a valid project for them, but
I'll tell you what's an easy solution, Mr. Chair. The applicant talks to the developer. They hire an engineering company that goes up there with Graves or with Danny. This is what you need to do. They get a price, and just for argument's sake, it's $200,000. Give us a bond with $200,000 that's dedicated to fixing the road, conditional upon all approvals. We got the money, we get the road fixed, pay for it out of the bond, or the person pays cash, they get the bond back. Like Greg said, a letter of commitment, I go one step further. We either get a bond or we get a financial commitment from developer through the property owner, or property owner through I don't care, as long as it doesn't come out of our money. And if it's 200 grand, we got the money. Then we can negotiate what they do with their solar farm. We get the road fixed, they get the ability to put a solar farm in and do a pilot with them.
So I
Good idea.
think Greg will engage, right?
Yep. Okay, good.
Okay, thank you
Pat,
very much.
anything else?
Thanks.
That's it, thanks.
Okay, thanks for coming, guys. All right.
And it was nice to see the Partridge Hill
Yeah, I
people
know, I'm
again.
glad you guys came out in
It's
force for
been a
this.
few years, but,
Whether we need to or not.
yep, no,
No,
it was fun times for a while back then.
no, guys sticking up for your neighborhood, that's, I'm happy to see that,
Yeah,
always. You're welcome.
Yep.
Of course, guys. Just want this board, as always, we want the next right thing to happen, and I know we agreed to stuff years ago just to, for whatever reason, and we just can't, we can't do that anymore.
no.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for that, guys. Good discussion. Next is item 10C, an agenda policy. Jonathan? Or Greg, you want to start? Kick us off? Or one of you guys?
First, I want to know if Sully had this with him on a vacation. He had a chance to go through it while he was doing his thing.
All kidding aside, Mr. Chair, I had no internet access. I could not use my phone.
No, I mean when you were on vacation.
That's what I'm saying. Well, yeah.
That's a joke.
Hey, listen, I sent an email the other day, and people responded, so I know you got it. But no, I didn't, honestly, Mr. Chair, I did not.
So why don't we just table it?
You want to table this for a
Yeah.
full board?
Everybody a chance
Thank you,
to
Mr.
take a
White.
look at it.
Jim, Michelle, can we do that one? We'll have Paul and Carrie here too.
Mr. Chair, make a motion that we approve Dudley Board of Health's request for $384 from the Clorinda Wood Fund for Harrington Memorial Health Services for March of 2018.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Sullivan, seconded by Mr. Ruda. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. All right. Fiscal year 19 budget, discussion and vote. Greg?
Well, the budget hasn't changed since I presented to you 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
To kind of recap where we're at, we have, on the municipal side, we had a total of $481,695 in new revenues. Municipal departments, including our fixed costs, were up $683,904. So what we had to do is I had to bring the budget back so that it came within the $481,695 that are available. And I was just doing some quick math while we were finishing up the last phase, because part of that increase, a good portion of that increase is what I call fixed costs or buried costs, and those would be pensions, health insurance, and non-exempt debt. And I just jotted down what those were. So if we look at non-exempt debt, which is the amount that's not covered through debt exclusions, that went up $31,000. Group insurance, which is our health insurance for employees and retirees, was up $47,000, and pensions were up $67,000. So deduct those from the number that I gave you, which was the total revenue increase of $481,695, and that leaves us not too much to be spread out amongst departments in a real general sense. So that gives you an idea of where we are at. The budget that I gave you 2 weeks ago is balanced. We have balanced it. We've funded our contractual obligations. I do need to do a little bit more work in terms of vetting out some of the additional numbers, but it's not going to change substantially what you have here today. And the revenues are all laid out in the documents that have been presented to the board. Again, the amount of the budget increase has to fit within that $481,695. That's our dilemma.
Okay.
Oh, Greg, you're looking for a motion to accept the budget as presented?
I think I would ask you to accept it. I think that there's always an opportunity going into town meeting to change if state aid should increase or there are other revenue sources that become available. But the way this budget is formulated is there are no layoffs. We're able to fund our contractual obligations. We're able to meet our fixed costs. And we're able to budget for what we consider to be costs that are in the budget that we feel are important. I think I indicated to you at the last meeting, there's some things that we weren't able to fund that we did want to fund. And those were, let's see.
There was a list within.
Highway Department wages, that would be $47,062, so that would be $40,000 for an additional person. And then contractual wages of $7,062. Snow and ice for $5,000. insurance in the treasurer collector's office for $15,535, additional money for the veterans budget, additional money for legal counsel, and then costs for police desk coverage, overtime, computer supplies. All of those totaling a grand total of about $153,000.
And we're deferring that to the fall?
We're deferring those. We want to fund them, and I'm saying if we identify funding between now and town meeting,
Okay.
they
slide
come
'em
back
in.
to you to put those things back in.
That's okay.
All right, so, Mr. Chair, I guess the motion would be to accept the budget as presented, but to hold off a formal vote until town meeting.
Yes.
All right, motion by Mr. Sullivan,
Second.
second by Mr. Ruda. Debbie,
Yeah, so Debbie, what, remember, we have increases, that 2.9% is correct for the municipal department budget increase, but it does not include the change in debt exclusions. And it, I can get you that information tomorrow. I don't want to do numbers on the fly. And it does not include the increase for the schools. No, that was a number that I came up with 2 weeks ago, and that number has not changed. Correct, that number has not changed, but what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to demonstrate the increase in the portion of the budget that we can control, which is the 2.9%. That's what we can control.
okay.
So that we get the motion and a second to
Motion and
accept.
second, more discussion. Danny, do you it?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to ask the administrator, Greg, was that that additional money for the highway, the question I asked you before the meeting?
Yeah, so that would be the, I think I indicated 47,000, I don't know, yes, Dan,
Okay.
that
yeah.
is. So the number that I read off to you, 47,000, you can catch me, 47,062.
That-
Would cover the amount that you you made me aware of,
Okay, yeah,
and an additional 7,000.
okay, perfect.
So, Mr. Chair, that's to hire a new person? That's not to correct the deficiency, how we've been using the
Correct,
90?
that's exactly what it is, Sally.
Okay, because I know that's an issue we talked about trying to address, but we can't.
We can't.
Okay. You know what I mean?
I'm all set, yeah.
We can't. We'll continue to use the existing practice, how we fund from Chapter 90.
Yeah,
going
that
forward.
one employee.
But one employee
Little
would do need-
more than one employee, 1 1/8, 1 1/4.
Right.
Yeah. All
Right.
right, thank you.
Well, the extra would go to offset what we've been using, right?
You think?
The extra, the 1/8 or whatever, would be used to offset the amount we've been using through 90, Chapter 90. Is that what you're gonna, is that the plan, or is that just extra money in the salary line item?
Normally, we have to use approximately 50,000. That's a little more than one person's salary a year. So I'd say it's about a person and eighth we usually pay for out of chapter.
Right.
The rest of the budget usually covers
The rest.
everybody else, yeah.
So the extra is to offset that amount, or is it just extra in the salary?
That's gonna be, yeah,
'Cause we're
we were
trying-
level funded originally for this budget, but the 353,000 last year covered 7 guys out of 9. But the 9th guy was on workman's comp, so that paid for 7 guys out of the 8 I actually had. The 9th guy we didn't worry about, because he was on workman's comp for a whole year. He's coming back now. So the way the budget was put together, we were short 2 men in the salary.
Right.
So I need that one extra,
In the fall? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
We're on the same page.
yeah.
We have no problem with that.
Right, nor do I.
Yep.
In case anybody's wondering.
Okay, thanks, Dan. So, oh, Greg, okay.
So, I just want to be clear that the budget, we have costs that go up over 2.5%. The reality is pensions and health insurance and debt service costs increase at a rate independent of whatever Prop 2.5 allows for. What that in turn means is that in order to balance the budget, other portions of the budget have to go up less than 2.5%. And that's the dilemma that we're in, is in order to fund these fixed costs, which exceed 2.5, we have to make cuts in other areas to kind of squeeze it all within the available funds that we have. It's not a pretty situation, but it's the reality that we're at.
So the the uncontrollable costs are things like healthcare and that sort of thing, which is figured into the 2.9% figure, right?
Correct. So it's health insurance, pensions, and non-exempt debt, which gets squeezed in there. And each of those items that I read out before, you know, they go up by, I think it's like $150,000 or $160,000, and that comes right off the top in terms of what we have for available funds.
And so where we can control the costs, I just wanted you to further explain
Yeah.
that, because where we can't control the costs, where you look at a department budget or a line item, we've taken it down below 2.5%.
We have, and I said before, I feel as though there are a number of items that are meritorious of funding. We just don't have the money. to be able to do it.
150-something thousand worth of money.
Yeah, we just don't have the money. And we've always gone back and said on our word that we'll look at it again in the fall, and we'll fund it in the fall if we can do it.
Yeah, and we've had a good track record.
Yeah, we've done pretty well at that. Okay, well, I mean, just someone had asked me the other day, well, now that the schools are funded, this should be an easy budget, and I said, no.
Well, the challenge that we have is because our tax base is so small, you know, our operating budget is so small, we raise so little revenue, we're behind the 8 ball no matter what. Although we're in a much better situation than we would have been had the override failed.
Oh, yeah.
Had the override failed, there would be a budget that would be presented that would have substantial cuts and staff reductions.
I'm glad we don't have to do that. Since I've been on the board, we haven't had any layoff type things. We're pretty proud of that. And like I said, the quality of life things, I don't want to give anything back, right? We got to keep going forward. Guys, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion and a
Thank you,
second.
Greg.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Also, thanks to our department heads for helping Greg, you know, getting what he needs to do that. All right, then that goes right into 10F, which is the town warrant review.
Yeah, so this is the warrant closed on Friday.
Yep.
So typically, the process that we have is we now send this off to council. Council will review it and come back to us with any changes, but this is the totality of all the articles that need to be on the warrant. The one thing I heard this evening that we don't have on here is if we need authorization to enter into a pilot or a payment in lieu of tax agreement for the solar farm that you talked about earlier. Possibly, we need to add that to the list. The other thing that I wanted to point out was the warrant included an article for taking the treasurer collector and the town clerk's position, grandfathering the incumbents and saying when the positions become vacant, they would be appointed by the board. And I talked to the town clerk, and she suggested that maybe a way of doing it is to break apart those two and look at the town clerk and the treasurer separately. The way they are right now is they're both lumped together in one single article, and I know the board had raised some concerns about that in the past. And that's still there. It's my article, so you can pull it if you want. But the question is whether you want to break those apart into two separate articles.
What article is it, Greg?
It would be,
Oh, Article X, right?
Yeah, a lot of
Article 10.
Article Malcolm X.
Oh, I see it.
do you see it? You
Yeah.
found it?
What page?
Where the top is existing density requirement table.
I see it.
All right, Mr. Chair,
Mr. Sullivan.
I missed that meeting that night when you had the original discussion. And again,
I don't think we really
I'm-
talked about it much.
well, I haven't had a chance to talk to either the clerk or the treasurer, but I did have a chance to speak to Mr. Ruda subsequent to that meeting. And once again, this is something I'm going to be fundamentally opposed to, only because as opposed to doing piecemeal this position 2 years later, like we did treasurer collector a couple years ago, against the recommendation of the board voted against it. It went through as a citizen's petition. I think we need to do a comprehensive review of how the town does business. I know personally I prefer more elected positions, but based on the last few election cycles, we have a lot of boards that are being filled by write-ins, which doesn't make anybody any less qualified or any more desirable for that position. But not veering towards charter talk, obviously, if we're having problems filling positions, I think we need to look at all elected and appointed boards and come up with a strategy addressing, I mean, we can check with the clerk, the last couple of years, water sewer commissioners, write-ins, planning board, write-ins. I mean, it's a big commitment, it's a lot of time, and when you get other boards that are appointed, you have a tendency to get people that are passionate or that want that, like the library trustees serve for, we have a couple that serve for decades, you know, and before we start piecemealing positions, I think we need to do some kind of review or sit and get in some kind of public hearing process, because a lot of people do prefer elected. You know, I hear the argument becomes a popularity contest. Well, then maybe if we're gonna go to appointed, we should look at appointing more positions than just cherry picking one this time, 1, 2 years from now, combine this job, you know, against the wishes of the board. That's just my feeling, and I know Jonathan didn't really either way, just, I happened to be talking to him at that time, and that was my feeling.
Greg, what do you think about it, through the chair?
I think it makes sense to look at the two positions separately. I think lumping them together probably doesn't make any sense. I think that the challenge is finding good and qualified people. There aren't a lot of people that are attracted to public service right now, for whatever the reasons are. When you put a position out for election, you hope that you have someone who's qualified. We've been very fortunate that we have two very capable, qualified individuals that serve in those positions. I think going forward, that's not always a guarantee.
And that was always my concern, right? I mean, just, especially there's a lot of knowledge there and prerequisites to really doing that job. And what if somebody comes in and wins? And that's fine, anybody can do it, but.
The flip side of the argument, to look at it the other way, is we have qualified professional assistants in both of those offices now. Whereas in the past, there were part-time people who wore a number of different hats. Now we've taken it and dedicated qualified professional people who serve as assistants. So the good news would be is if there were a transition in a position, elected position, someone else would be, there is continuity in the office, in both the town clerk and the treasurer's office, which does, in a sense, protect the town against some type of catastrophe.
But, Mr. Chair, too, that also goes back to people that have been around for several years. Michelle worked down the hall in the day, would be downstairs now. Those offices at one time were fully staffed with two people. And through the years with cuts and reductions, and as Greg stated, there was some job sharing. At one point, the assessor and the clerk came before us and their assistants went to part-time. Now I think they're both full-time, right? Or clerk's office.
Assessors has a full-time, treasurer collector has a full-time assistant, and I believe the clerk's position is still not full-time, but we're making progress in increasing the hours in that job.
And that's what happened back then. We would get some continuity, but when you go to appointed, obviously you're gonna get someone that applied for the job, that went through the process, but may not be, and I'm not saying should be a resident, but may not be a resident, may not be as invested in the town as much as invested in the position. Yes, they may be qualified, but they come from, pick a place. You know, it's double-edged. I mean, as Greg stated, you know, we've had a lot of success. I mean, the town clerk was an assistant for a lot of years to Frida, I believe she was assistant to, right, Mrs. Lambrose?
Which one was this?
Or
was assistant.
was she, yeah, and then when Frida retired, I forget what happened, there was actually an interim that wasn't Aura, and then she ran for the position, and, you know, based on her job knowledge and her ability, people saw to it. You know, same thing with treasurer collector. I mean, Rich was the current treasurer, came in and was able to learn under the previous treasurer. I don't know if he was actually the assistant or it just was a period where he overlapped. And I wasn't against combining treasurer collector. I think the argument at the time was, let's take it as a whole instead of a piece. But it went through as a citizen's petition, and I'm not.
Roll, we had to go to.
Right, but it was put through as a citizen's to get on the warrant,
Right.
and I'm not saying it wasn't the right end result. It just seems to me we should do a comprehensive review.
Yeah, I think good points on both sides, but I think that, I hate to see it happen piecemeal. I kind of agree with Sully with that. To Greg's point, it's nice to have a succession plan, but we can't base a policy, a comprehensive townwide policy on whether to appoint or elect.
You have to take the.
I mean, you're looking at taking the vote away from the voters.
Yeah.
And handing it over to the Board of Selectmen based on who works in the
You have
office.
to take the personalities out of it when you look at this.
Oh, right, and I am, I certainly, you know, and actually, Jonathan, to Jonathan's point, speaking for myself, we're gonna be looking into it almost as like giving Greg, because now we're gonna probably selectmen can go, but Greg will be sitting in on interviews. He's gonna bring forward a recommendation, and he's not led us wrong yet. It's just, like Jonathan said, a lot of people like to go into the ballot and be able to vote. They wanna see the face that they're comfortable with at town hall, and
If I saw some movement towards a more of a overall review of how we appoint versus elect, I'd be okay with that. If we had that kind of commitment to do something like that, I'd be willing to take another bite of the apple, but without that, I just hate to see it happen piecemeal.
And that's how, I hate to say it, that's how it's being proposed, because we're kind of looking at the future and trying to line up things. And
Right.
yeah.
I agree with you on that.
You know, and I'm not saying that everybody has to be in town to be appointed, because obviously the administrator isn't, and I dare someone to say it wasn't a good appointment. You know, fire and EMS isn't, and I dare someone to say that wasn't a good appointment for the town. I mean, there is some success there, but that's different than
Yeah.
a town official. You know, that Greg likes to say, he serves at the pleasure of the board, and so with the department heads.
So how do we want to leave that one, guys? So Greg, maybe had discussion with the people in question, or?
yeah, I mean, I think certainly the way it's worded right now is a combined one, is the piecemeal approach.
I think we can pass it over and
I think no, I don't even need to put it on.
just take it off.
Yeah, I take it off with the idea that there's some discussion going forward in terms of how we approach this.
Right, you know,
I think it would be a shame to have it go to town meeting and not have unanimous support behind it and have it be defeated, and then when we've got legitimate reasons to make a change in the future, it doesn't have the momentum at that time.
right, you know, with the understanding, and again, speaking for myself, I'm not against either position. I just, as we've been saying, we're beating it up, you know, let's sit down, figure it out. Greg can come up with a strategy with you, the chair, or whoever the next chair may be, it may be you again.
Yeah, I mean, you don't even have a job description.
No,
This could
no.
happen, we take the vote, and this happens 90 days later, we don't even know what the qualifications are,
Yeah,
versus
Yeah,
just in
just
general.
throwing something at the wall to see if it sticks.
Yep,
it's just the way it's worded is. I'd like to see some changes to that.
The other articles are things that we've talked about before. There's really nothing remaining items in here that are major. There's some bylaw changes and things like that. We have two major capital projects that are on here, which is the LED street lighting. Talked about that before, that we have to borrow the money and then we use the savings in the conversion to pay off the debt. And the repairs to the roof and the cooling system are here, but the dollar amounts need to be changed. Beyond that, there's some duplicates. As I look through some of the articles in here from the treasurer collector, there's some things where we're looking to recap some money for this year's budget. We'll incorporate all of those under a single article. So if you look at page 1, you look at the only article XX on the warrant, which is the last one on page 1, and that says veterans benefits, snow and ice, unemployment compensation. We would also add to that general insurance, and postage. And then lastly, an amount for the Medicare account. Because the town continues to pay the 1.45% Medicare tax. So all of those can be amalgamated into a single article that don't need to stand alone as a separate article.
Okay. And what do we need tonight, Greg? Nothing?
I don't think we need
We're
anything.
gonna go through with the FAA at some point, right?
We do, and that's why it's important if you can get to that meeting on May 2nd. We'll go through these in detail at that hearing.
I thought the email, is there something this Thursday?
Yeah, Mike Did Mike come to you?
Mine said the 26th.
Can't do it.
Oh, I didn't see, there was a second one went up, I didn't see the second one.
The second.
No,
Okay.
sure, there's
I thought it was this
So
one.
the capital committee meeting that
See, I
night
read my
and
emails.
the warrant informational hearing.
He read his email.
I read my emails. Michelle's good. She always, if there's something I need to know, she makes sure I know.
Make sure. Okay, so no vote or anything? Oh, on the last page, put an S on my last name.
Yeah, sure. You don't have an S?
Murray. It says Murray. John Murray. That's still Italian, but not
Really?
Scribner.
All right, thank you, guys. Thank you, Greg, Michelle.
Let me see.
11, Jared, student representative.
Who's Jared? Oh,
There he is.
I told you I'm taking his job tonight.
I do know that name.
Good evening, everyone. Spring sports have been underway at the Hill for the past 3 weeks. The varsity baseball team will face Tantascwa in Fiskdale tomorrow, April 24th at 3:30 p.m. The team has had a difficult start to the season, falling to Nipmuc on April 10th, 9-5, and Wachusett on April 13th, 8-1. But hopes are high for the rest of the season. The varsity softball team defeated Tantascwa on April 10th, 14-2, but also fell to Wachusett on April 13th, 17-2. They will face Tantascwa again tomorrow, April 24th at 3:30 p.m. in Fiskdale. Congratulations are also in order for varsity softball player Sophia Sharapa, who hit her 100th career hit on April 11th. Great job, Sophia. Third quarter report cards were issued on Friday, April 6th. The Student Council-sponsored Spring Blood Drive was held on Tuesday, April 10th. The Shepherd Hill Bands performed their spring concert on Tuesday, April 10th. The Shepherd Hill Show Choirs performed their competition sets for the final time at the District Show Choir Festival on Wednesday, April 11th. April school vacation was held from Monday, April 16th through Friday, April 20th. In the coming weeks at Shepherd Hill, the Shepherd Hill Drama Club will perform its spring production, It's All Greek to Me, on Friday, April 27th and Saturday, April 28th. The district-wide art show will be held in the Shepherd Hill cafeteria on Friday, May 4th, showcasing artistic talent from students in all of the schools and all of the district schools. Excuse me. The SAT will be given at Shepherd Hill on Saturday, May 5th, and finally, AP exams will be given on Monday, starting on Monday, May 7th, and will continue through Thursday, May 17th.
Mr. Chair, a couple of things for Jared. Thank you. The 100 hits is pretty impressive, because when you look at it, an average season is maybe 20 games with playoffs. If you play 4 years, it's only 80 games. That's over a hit a game, which is hard. And I noticed when I came back, I was reading some, I think it was a Telegram website. I just Googled Dudley sometimes, right? And we had some winter athletes that made either all-star teams, or if we could ask Jared or ask the schools, maybe we could recognize people at our next meeting or down the road, maybe not have them come in, but at least read their names. I know there was some indoor track people that all-stars, and at least one of the female basketball players. I didn't see any on the boys' side. I don't know if they had announced them yet, but I'm sure the way their season went, they had one or two anyway that made league all-stars at a minimum. So if we get a list maybe of the student athletes and give them some recognition, I think that'd be nice.
That's a good idea. I know the girls' track, they had some, like, record breakers.
Oh, yeah, Rebecca James.
Maddie Marsh.
Taylor Norton.
Yeah, I think Molly Springer was one of
Maddie
the girls.
Marsh.
Maddie
Yeah,
Marsh.
Maddie Marsh. And I'm sure it's on the boys' side. We had some pretty good runs on the boys' side too. So, like I say, just get a list and at least give them, if they want to come in, they can get recognized. It'd be nice. If they can't, we can just read their names.
Okay, good idea.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Tatro.
Thank you, Jared.
No problem. No.
All right.
When's your last meeting?
Um,
Anytime you want, actually.
anytime I want, but probably the last one before graduation.
Senioritis.
Keep you as long as we can, right?
Whichever one's before June 3rd. And I know that's a Sunday.
Oh, town meeting. Yeah, you're not going to come to that. Are you 18 yet?
No.
So you can't.
Okay, board members' comments? Stephen?
Mr. Chair, just, I know he wasn't a town official, but everybody knew him. Mr. Peckham passed away, Bradford Peckham. I mean, I had an opportunity to meet him probably almost 30 years ago when I first was in Dudley, and that's a name in Dudley that's been around for a long, long time, and he was a good guy. He was very simple, he was a hard-working man, did the farm, worked a full-time job, but, he always had something to say, and it was always wisdom, and I'm sure he's missed by his family.
Well said. Well said, Steve. Jonathan, anything? Okay. I just had a couple of things. I just want to let everybody know that the Dudley Little League is actually going to have their parade on May 12th at noon, starting here at the Town Hall and going down to the fields. I'd invite any board members, Greg, anybody who would like to walk in that. I'll also reach out to Peter Durant and Ryan Fatman to see if they would like to do that. They reached out to me today. It's always good to promote our Little League and do that. And the other thing I wanted to say is last week we all got some news, or very recently, about Greg Desto making the decision to move into a different role, and I just wanted to thank him publicly on behalf of, well, hopefully I speak on all of you guys, I think we do, that how well he did in that role, and how much of a pleasure it was to work with him side by side as a board member, and especially last year as chairman with me. I really enjoyed it. I consider him a friend, and we will miss him. So, Greg, thank you for all you did for our district.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd like to echo that also. I had the opportunity to speak to him on the phone, and certainly his stated goals in the paper were exactly what we talked about. It's a big commitment with a young family. Anybody who knows Mr. Desto, he doesn't do things 50%. He's 100%. He's visible. He was around. It does take a toll. I mean, it's not an easy job, and I certainly understand his reasoning, and I wish him nothing but the best. And I'm sure he's in our sister town. We may not see him as much, but I'm sure we haven't heard the last of Mr. Desto.
Well, his backyard, the line is the Dudley town line, so he can come visit us anytime he wants. Thank you again, Greg.
I'm good.
Okay, departments, Danny? Dean?
All right, hurry up, come on.
Show us your good side when you're walking out the door.
me.
Hey, show us your good side when you're walking out the door.
So, on June 2nd, I gave you these pamphlets. The Dudley Fire Department, in coordination with the American Red Cross, will be hosting a day where we'll go out and we'll give out free smoke detectors. We'll help install them as long as your house was built before 1975, because this is for battery-operated only smoke detectors. We can't obviously do hardwired smoke detectors, but if they're 10 years or older, we'll come and replace them, and we're going to be conducting that from 9 in the morning till about 5 o'clock in the afternoon on June 2nd of 2018. And that's for any age. That's not like we run a regular program off the SAFE grant every year, and we still run that for 55 and over. But this particular one here is for anybody of any age, as long as they're battery-only operated smoke detectors.
Is they grant funded, Chief?
What's that?
Is that grant funded, that program? Or?
Well, yeah, it's free to the town and free to the town's people. It doesn't cost us anything. So yeah, it is fun. I'm not sure where the money actually comes from, but it is funded through a grant somewhere along the line.
Tom Texas Chairman. That's a good one, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. That's great.
As we know, Dudley's got plenty of homes that were built before 75 that can probably use it.
Okay. Thanks, Dean. Steve?
And that's 1975, not 18, right?
Got some of those, too.
1775, too. Just one thing, our drug take-back, prescription drug drop-off is Saturday from 9 to 1. So if anybody has any drugs or anything they want to get rid of, Saturday be the time, 9 to 1 down here at the station.
Chief, someone asked me a question about that, Mr. Chair, if I may. They wanted to know if it's not the drop-off day, they could still bring it, right? If there's an issue and you guys can dispose of it?
Yeah, we have the kiosk that's there now 24/7, so
Right.
it's all locked down the lobby. And so, yeah, we go through that periodically. And then we usually dispose of all those things at the same time we do these disposals, so it works out pretty good.
That's what I told them. I thought they were. I told them to call the station because I think what happened was they had a elderly death in the family, and they wanted to remove all the prescription drugs because the husband was still alive, and they were some concern. They didn't want to store them at their own home, so I told them to give a call.
Yeah, it's right in the corner. As you approach our window, right to the left in the corner, there's the kiosk there. You can drop them off anytime.
Perfect. Thank
So,
you,
Mr.
Chief.
Chair, we'll get the word out on both programs.
It was just comment from Michelle.
Thank you.
Good, thank you,
you.
Steve. Also wanted one more note to thank everybody who participated in Earth Day this past weekend, so it's always a good thing. Oh, it's this coming weekend? Someone asked me, and I was like,
It's this weekend?
that's twice I've gotten that wrong now.
Actually, National Earth Day is Saturday.
Okay.
Ours is 29th.
I told them, it's not that day, but they told me it was. I'm like, okay.
Why would we have it
Oh,
not on
thank you,
Earth
the next,
Day?
Because it was a weekday, I think, right?
Oh, was it a week
Yeah,
then?
it's today.
no,
No,
28th is the day.
it's the cleanup day that we do,
Right.
but the actual day is, was it today or
It's yesterday.
yesterday?
Yesterday,
Yeah.
that's what I'm thanking people for. Right. So, all right.
Get Jared for something.
See, Jared, thanks, man.
No problem.
The award-winning student selectman.
Anything else?
Why watch on your phone the whole meeting?
Motion to adjourn, guys?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Mr. Ruda, second by Mr. Sullivan. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody. Good night.